Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Testing Psychologist podcast. I'm glad to be here with you. Today's topic is super interesting to me personally, and I think to a lot of you out there in the audience. I am talking with Dr. Hilary Anand about living abroad and getting licensed in other countries and practicing in other countries and moving your family around the globe to be a psychologist in places other than the United States. So Hilary has done this in a couple of different countries, New Zealand and Canada. And like I said, we get into all of the logistics around, well, what it means to be a nomadic psychologist. All right. We talk about paperwork, unexpected visa stuff, personal and professional benefits of the nomadic lifestyle. We dive into the details of how to get licensed in these two places. We talk about ethical and kind of logistical hurdles that you might run into, financial considerations in terms of the things you have to spend money on to live and work abroad, and all kinds of other things. We delve into the family dynamics and how to handle it with kids, which is sort of my main block at this point with older kids. So lots to take away if you have considered working abroad as a psychologist. So for the formal introduction, Hilary is the co-founder of Lumos Assessment, a clinic focused on providing learning disability and ADHD testing for teens and adults. She's been traveling around the world with her family for the past several years, and she's in the process of moving abroad in the current moment. In her spare time, she likes to spend lots of time with nature and her cats and writing fiction. So there's lots to take away here. As always, let's see, if you are a psychologist looking for some business support, the place where I actually met Hilary was in one of my mastermind groups, and there are new cohorts starting in the first week of August. They're going to be beginner, intermediate, and advanced cohorts. So if you're looking for a group experience with accountability and coaching to kind of get your practice unstuck, this could be the thing for you. So you can go to thetestingpsychologist.com/consulting and book a pre-group call. All right. Thanks, everybody. Let's get to my conversation with Dr. Hilary Anand. Hilary, hey, welcome to the podcast.
Hi,
Thanks for being
nice
here.
to be here.
Yeah. This is an exciting topic. This topic of practicing abroad has come up a lot in the past few months, I think, and certainly in the past several years. I'd imagine there are kind of cycles to these discussions, but right now we are in kind of an upcycle around practicing abroad and how we might go somewhere besides the US if we chose to. And you've done this.
Mhm.
So I'm excited to chat with you. So we can start with the question that I always start with, which is, some variation of, why is this important to you? You can take that in whatever direction you want. It's kind of an interesting application to this topic. So yeah. Why is
Yeah,
this
yeah, it
important?
is. It's not a typical like, how do you practice? What do we do? So I'll say a little bit of background for myself. We've been pursuing living abroad, moving abroad, pretty much since college, but
Mm-hmm.
really since 2022. And
Hmm.
that was when, post pandemic, we're like, just head out for a little bit, and we just really wanted to travel. And so we looked and we tried to find all these places. And I think to your question about, why is this important for us? Travel and adventure is important. We've taken our whole family, including our cat, abroad, and
Can't
we
forget the
have
cat.
traveled. Can't forget the cat. She can't go to all the places, but she's been to many of them, including to Europe. So she's a very well
Nice.
traveled cat. But it's just getting the experience of being abroad and living abroad and being in these places has really been valuable for me and for our family and for the way I practice, for the way I think about the world. My kids are young, so for the way they see the world, it's been incredible.
Mm.
So I think that's why it's so important to me. I've learned things about going through the licensure process in these other places that made me really think about the way we practice in the US. I'm in California, and just pros and cons, good things and bad things about it, but it's made
Sure.
me really think about that on a deeper level. So I think just getting that experience is really important for me personally.
Yeah. Can you think back to the moment when you decided to take the leap? Because I feel like that's, a lot of us are in this maybe contemplation stage, right? Like we've
Mhm.
done some research, maybe a lot of research, and then it's a whole other thing to actually move to action. And I don't know, can you remember back? Was there like a tipping point, or was it a slow build and you like did all this planning and then went when you planned to go, or how did that process work?
Oh gosh, there's so many mistakes we made. Okay, so I'll talk about I've gotten licensed in 2 other places, in New Zealand and in Alberta, Canada. And
Okay.
those processes were a little different. So, New Zealand, we were kind of in the height of the pandemic. In California, especially Northern California, we stayed in pandemic protocol much longer than many other places did. And
Right.
so we're really looking at like 2021, 2022. And we're like, you know what? We just want to leave. Like, we want to get out. We want to go somewhere. Hey, New Zealand doesn't have, you know, they're doing this really well. And then I, similar to what you talked about, just researched, like, did a ton of research. Like, hey, could this actually work? Do I like this? Da, 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 da. Um, I am not a paperwork admin person by nature. I'm really quite awful at it. And so it was a huge test of my ability to like, can I actually do the thing? I can research
Mm,
everything, right? I can research, I can find out more about it, but like, can I actually do the thing? And we did finally settle on New Zealand. It was far enough away to be adventure. It was similar enough that our kids wouldn't have a terribly hard time kind of adjusting. The other place we were thinking about was Portugal at that time, and we were able
mm,
to take a trip in early 2022. And for several reasons, it was not the right fit for us. Beautiful country,
mm.
wonderfully warm, inviting spot, but it just wasn't a good fit for. We didn't want to be in the city. We wanted to be kind
Yeah.
of out in the wilderness with the sheep.
Mm,
Um, and so we really like it was just kind of step by step. It was like, okay, we're gonna do this, and then like let me
mm-hmm,
just take the next step. Let me just do
mm-hmm.
the next thing and the next thing. Um, and so there wasn't a moment in time, but I will say there was a moment in time where we're like, we're leaving. We're out. Um, and for us, that came at the Uvalde shootings. That came very much at the like, okay, we've got young
Mm,
kids, our kids were going to be enrolled in school at that point. And we're like, oh, we're out.
sure.
Um, and so it was kind of a slow build up till that point, and then it was like, we're going for this 100%.
Yeah.
Um, and luckily, I had already been licensed. I already got licensed pre then, and then was just kind of in the process of looking for jobs. And then I think I got a job off. I think I got like 2 interviews like within the next week or 2. So it was really kind of like all landing at the same time.
Right, right, right,
But I
right.
remember being out to
Fortuitous.
dinner with my partner and being like, "Yeah, it's time to go.
Mm-hmm.
It's go time. Let's do this."
Gotcha.
We also
Gotcha.
had moments in which we reversed our decision, and I can remember those very well too.
Yeah, I could imagine that. I mean, there's a lot of ambivalence. You can, yeah, pros and cons, and I think we'll probably get into a lot of that. But just speaking, personally, I can identify with some of that, to a minor degree, right? Like we've considered moving abroad. We've done a lot of research into different places, and I would say maybe gone like 60% of the way down the path. And but there is a lot of back and forth. And like, what about this? And how do we handle this? And of course, ultimately, we're still in the U.S., so that's where
Yeah,
we've
and
landed.
well,
But
and what made the difference, and what I would recommend to everyone if you can, is to see the place ahead of time,
yeah,
which I know is, like, really silly, but was not silly when you were in, 2022 and it was hard to travel and there was no one on airplanes.
mm,
It made travel wonderful, but it was, like, very hard to do, right? And you couldn't even
hmm,
do it to certain countries like New Zealand.
oh yes,
Because when I got licensed in Alberta, it was a very different decision-making process because it was
mm,
very much, "Hey, we love this place. We absolutely love this city. We love this location. I wanna be a part of the community. I wanna help. Let's go through the licensure process." And that was a different decision making, but similar, like, oh, a little bit more conviction, I think.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
Well, let's dig into some of the nuts and bolts here. I know people are probably anxious to hear what this actually looks like. I would love to start with more of the professional stuff. We can talk about
Yeah.
licensure and maybe some ethics and just practice guidelines and things like that. And then definitely want to hit the personal components too, and talk about what this was like for your family. How did you actually, live somewhere else and, adapt to that and all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So let's start with the kind of the licensure and logistics. And you can start with either Canada or New Zealand, and
Hmm.
let's talk about both. Yeah, start with whatever one makes the most sense.
Yeah. Um, Let me start with Canada because it's a little bit fresher in my mind. It's more recent.
Great.
Um, so we did Alberta, which might be different province to province. So I can only speak to that. So we did Alberta licensure, and what I did first was seek CAP licensure, I believe is the acronym.
Hmm.
It's with the board. And you can basically get this kind of condensed licensure. California is not a part of SIPAC, so
Mm,
this was a way I was looking at getting licensed in a different state for practice reasons. And I
hmm.
was like, hey, let me just get this kind of licensure that I can transfer to different states. So I had luckily already done that.
Okay. Yeah, let me ask a quick question. Does SIPAC impact or influence Canadian licensure at all? Does that somehow pave the way?
It's a good question. I don't know
Okay.
because I can't do SIPAC.
Right. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
since you
I
mentioned that, I
think
thought maybe there's some role
I
there.
don't know if there is, but I know through this licensure type, and I can send a link to you later, but through this licensure type, I could just basically like send this to Alberta, and it was
Mm-hmm.
almost everything. Like it was almost everything that I needed to get licensed there. And I had to fill out one or two more forms and of course pay them and get like a reference or two. But it
Mm-hmm.
made the paperwork down to like 2 pages because I had
Okay.
already gotten this. Yeah. And so I don't know if SciPact works similarly. I would
Mm.
like encourage people to check that out. So I did that, and then I'm taking my ethics exam. So you get licensed, and they say, "Hey, here's your preliminary licensure. You just have to take an ethics exam in 6 months."
All right.
Yeah. So it's
That
pretty
sounds
straightforward. It's a
pretty
self-study handbook.
straightforward.
Yeah.
Right. So that's interesting. So there's it sounds like it's similar to US licensure where there's no national license necessarily. It's province by province.
It's province by province. Yeah. And I do believe they're working towards kind of being able to work across provinces. I met somebody in Canada who works in BC and Alberta, but you had to do province by province. So that's part of going there and figuring it out because they're all very different, huge
Yes.
country.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that was it. That was a pretty straightforward one.
Great. So very practical question. Is this just something someone could Google like Alberta psychologist licensure and it should
Mm-hmm.
come up pretty easily?
Yes. So over there, one thing that's different from the US is it's usually called the College Board instead
Mm,
of university or things like that. And so you can look up just licensure psychologist and then insert the province name. And then you'll usually get taken to their website. I'm a huge advocate, and you'll hear this in the New Zealand part too, especially in the New Zealand part,
hmm.
is just call them. Like if you have a question, there was something I had to get like proof of being licensed in New Zealand and in California, and I had a particular question about it, and so I just called them. And they're like, "Hey,
Okay.
yeah, here's the way to think about it and talk through." So they're super friendly. Just if you
Great.
have any questions on any of the process. And then the other thing I would say is there's often multiple ways to get licensed. There's if you've been educated in the country, if you're an international trained psychologist, if you're
Yeah.
international but with this CAP organization, right? Like there's different ways to do it.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that in terms of reciprocity of a US license we could just stick with Canada for now. It sounds like you went the CAP route. As far as you understand, is there pretty good reciprocity? I mean, does the US license carry enough weight?
It
Mm-hmm.
carries a lot of weight actually.
Mm-hmm.
So what I have found is in the countries I've looked into, which have been mainly again Canada, but Alberta and New
Mm-hmm.
Zealand, also some other ones I've looked at, the US license and the standards that we have for especially if you did an APA internship
Yeah.
are pretty widely held across the world, which is
Right.
great. And then you have, like I said, usually have to take an ethics exam, which 100% agree with, makes sense.
I suppose.
But it's pretty reciprocal, and our training here is usually pretty reciprocal.
Okay, great. So
Yeah.
before we pivot over to New Zealand, maybe this is the place where we can also talk about work visa stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at least for Canada or Alberta, what does that look like in terms of, okay, so maybe you get the license, that's fantastic, but how can you actually work there?
What can you do? Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a couple ways, and I am not an immigration attorney, so I'm gonna like
Of
hugely
course.
caveat that, right? I'm
Of
gonna say the
course.
way we have done it is you can basically either you form like you can form a company, right?
Mm,
And hire yourself. We are lucky that we have friends there, and we have my husband has a coworker there, and so he's able to have the coworker and him establish a company there
okay.
in Alberta, and
Uh-huh.
then hire one of us.
Uh-huh.
So they could establish a mental health company and hire me as the main psychologist. Yeah, so there's
Okay.
that way. The other way that my attorney had talked about that we didn't pursue, so I don't know as much about, is the USMCA. Like there's a lot of reciprocity in terms of working between Mexico, Canada, and the US.
Okay.
And so there's also kind of pathways that way. I would highly recommend you can find an immigration attorney and just get a consultation for like
Mm-hmm.
30 minutes for
Mm-hmm.
roughly 75 US, and then just be able to be like, here's my licensure, here's this, what are my options? And then they can walk you through all the things, which is what we did. And then you can apply either through the system or you can apply at the border too.
Mm.
Currently, this is in June 2025. So you can
Right.
apply at the border. Yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. I wasn't even thinking about establishing a separate business in Canada, although
Mhm.
that is certainly a viable
A
option.
lot of people can also find jobs, right? So if you get licensed, this is what I did in New Zealand, you could also do it in Alberta. Once you're licensed, you can apply for jobs locally, and get somebody to sponsor a work visa too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a
Fair
huge
enough.
shortage. That's the thing. Like there's a huge shortage of mental health professionals in both of these countries. Um, and so while it is harder to get hired as an international trained psychologist, it's not nearly impossible. And
Okay.
you have training a lot of people don't.
Fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's switch over to New Zealand. What was that
New
process like
Zealand.
as far as getting licensed?
New Zealand. I love New Zealand. But it was so much trickier. And I think that was a couple things. One, costs a lot of money to ship things there, like a lot of money. Right. So every time I had to ship documents over there, it was like $150 because of the
Okay.
international fee. So that's a
Yeah.
silly
Hidden
thing, but
costs.
like for somebody who's not great at administrative stuff like I am, like I had to ship 2 or 3 packages because I couldn't get it all together and do one time. So that being said, again, it's more forms. I've called them several times to be like, "Hey, what does this mean? What can I do here?" One of the tricky things about New Zealand and being in California, which is not applicable to all US states, um,
Mm-hmm.
you had to get documents notarized, but then the
Mm.
person notarizing it had to certify it for you. I couldn't self certify. And in
Okay.
California, you have to self certify when you notarize. So I had to, on one of our trips, I had to drive to a different state, get it certified there, and drive back and then mail it out.
Oh
Yeah,
gosh. Okay.
it was really bizarre. And it was like for one
Yeah.
document in particular, and I think it was for like my grades or something like that. It was some like innocuous form. And they were very particular. And this is why I had to mail multiple times. I was like, they're very particular. Somebody else had to certify it, not me.
I see.
But what do you want me to do? I can in California.
Right.
So that was the part that I felt like it was much trickier in New Zealand than Alberta was they were much more particular on that type of paperwork and wouldn't flex. This is how it goes in California. Like I've gotten it notarized 3 times. I don't know what you want me to do.
Right.
And the answer was go to another state. So
Mm.
I was lucky that we were like 20 minutes away on one of our trips, so I could do that. But so I remember that being really tricky. I did not need to take an ethics exam.
Oh,
I thought was really interesting. I know.
sure. That's
Um,
fascinating.
I thought it was really interesting there. Um, yeah, so it was just a little bit different of a process. Like it was more heavily paperwork focused, which is like again not my strong suit, but it was
Gotcha.
less of an adjustment in the way I practice versus Canada. It was more like, hey, let's look at your ethics exam. Let's have you retake an ethics exam. And their CE form, I didn't mention this, but their CE form is really different than California. And I had to fill it out and basically say what CEs I think I'm going to get this year and how I'm going to meet each requirement, including Alberta has a requirement for Indigenous um, like you have to educate yourself for 4 hours every year on indigenous
Mm,
culture and
hmm.
things like that. And you have to see how you're going to get that training, which is not something we do in California. So,
Sure.
um, yeah, so it was a little bit more
Okay.
like theoretically interesting for Alberta and like paperwork difficulty for New Zealand.
I hear you. And when we're talking about paperwork, I know, again, very practical, but are we talking like transcripts and, I don't know,
Mm.
licensure documentation, like of training? I mean, what can you remember what kind of documents and
Yeah, so
paperwork?
it was forms you had to fill out, transcripts, your wherever you've been licensed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what else was it? There's 2 or 3 more forms. Oh, you had to get references.
Mm,
Again, more references. You had to get I believe you had to show, like, your most recent CEs. I could be wrong on that one.
okay.
But yeah, you had to kinda show that. You had to show your most recent licensure for sure, like, if you renewed it. You had to list out your professional activities and send a CV. Like, there was just a lot of detail to that one that I
Sure.
think I've tried to, like, blot out of my memory.
That's fair. Do you remember how long it took?
Yes, I do remember that. It took me 6 months, I think, for New Zealand because of all
Okay.
that back and forth
Yeah.
on the certifying that transcript, and then it took me 2 months for Canada, and 7 weeks of that was waiting for California to send my license.
Oh gosh. Okay. Okay.
Just
So what I'm
very
hearing here is,
different, like, very different
yeah,
process.
yeah, yeah. Seems like Canada is much easier.
Yeah.
Much easier. Gotcha. And then how about the work visa situation in New Zealand? What did that look like?
So that I did not do it's harder to do, like, set up your own business there, so I
Hmm.
didn't pursue that path at that time, so I went to interviews. There are a lot of recruiters that will help you find a job, so I think I had, like, 6 interviews, 1 or 2 of which I found on my own, 4 of which a recruiter helped me with.
Hmm.
There are lots of jobs available. If you're like, "Hey, New Zealand's great." I mean, I love New Zealand, it's a fantastic place. There's a lot of need for mental health, and so your wages will not nearly be the same
In what
because the
way?
economy is
Less
just
or
different,
more?
way less
Okay. Okay.
because the economy is so different,
Okay.
but, uh, the job availability is there, and you're still making to be clear, you're still making really good money for being in New Zealand. It's just less than you would get paid in the US.
I see. I see. Fair enough. And how long did you end up staying there?
So, New Zealand was tricky. Smiling because it was such a ridiculous process. So
No.
I got a few job offers, one of which I would have loved, but to meet their visa standards, you have to make a certain amount of money, and at that time, that job offer didn't offer enough, so I couldn't take it, and that was really unfortunate because it was in the city we wanted, all of that. Then I got
Mm,
another job offer, which was fantastic. The team was great, the university was great, all of it was a really cool job. We went to the city. It was a crazy trip. We went there, we got COVID, we had to isolate. It
oh
was
gosh.
again 2022. It was like a really crazy, crazy trip. We went to the city and we're like, I don't know if we can do this. Um, and so I remember going home and I remember being at dinner with my husband and being like, what do we do? We've already pulled the
Mm,
kids out of school. We've already like gotten the house ready to rent. Like we've done everything to be able to do this. And I don't know if I want this job. And again, it wasn't the team, it wasn't the university. All of that was fantastic. It was the location and being real about moving halfway around the world
of
that I
course.
think got us cold feet. And so we decided not to. And we decided,
Mm,
like, well, I guess we're just going to travel around the world because we've already set up our whole life to be able to do this. My husband took a remote job, like everything. We'd set up everything for
okay.
it. And so we did end up traveling and it was great. And we got to try out all these places. So we ended up going back to New Zealand for 7 weeks the next year
Okay.
because, again, it's a fantastic place. I love it. Ironically enough, we're thinking about going for another couple months next year.
Okay.
It's a place we have not been able to quit, but I think when it came to that point in time, we were having a really hard time committing to it. So we were there for 7 weeks. We'll be there for another couple months, I think, next year. And then in Canada, we are actually currently in process of doing it. So we are in process of
Mm,
I've talked with several people in the local area, figured out kind of what, renting a space office space will look like, and then we're just kind of in the final stages of getting the work permit and then, finding a place to live. So,
great. Right.
Yeah.
So in each of these scenarios, it sounds like you would be working locally. So there's not really any conversation around like how to manage different time zones and like, you know, clients in different parts of the world, or are there? Mhm.
There is. So, for each of these places, I'd be working locally, like you said, but also still supervising and kind of managing for back home. So there's
Sure.
times in which we're back at home, and there's times in which I need to meet with my business partner or I need to do things like that. And so those are more managing the time zones. Luckily, both of those are pretty easy. Alberta is an hour ahead
Hmm.
of California, so really easy there. New Zealand is 19 hours ahead, which functionally just means they're like it's a day and like 5 hours. Kind of wake up early, end early, that's an easier time zone. And my partner's had to work in both places. So we've had to manage like what does his schedule look like off shifted to ours. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And I've
So not so
definitely
bad.
messed it up a couple times. Like I've been like, oh,
Yeah.
I totally did not put the time zone on correctly.
Of course, of course. So before we transition to more of the, I guess, lifestyle factors,
Yeah.
what that was like, any hidden, I don't know, ethical concerns, legal implications? I mean, anything in these processes that people may not anticipate that was kind of surprising to you?
Yeah. So one, I can say the tax concerns, right?
Mm,
Kind of really thinking through that, especially if you open up your own business and really working with kind of somebody who does taxes to do it, to manage it. There is a certain amount of money you can make abroad before taxes kick in the US because they'll always tax you if you're a US,
mm,
but you can earn up to a certain amount of US dollars abroad before that will kick in on top of it. So also thinking about that when you get a job offer of like, oh, can I stay below this limit? So you don't have to pay more taxes on top of it.
sure. So
Yeah, so I think taxes just in general.
yeah, yeah, no, that's important. That's important. So this is getting in the weeds a little bit, but are you talking about the I know you have your private practice in that's based in California. So are you saying that when you live abroad, then it's the money that you make from your private practice while living abroad, or it's the money that you make from the local job while living
Yep.
abroad?
Yes, both.
Is still, yeah. Okay. So
So
all
in
that funnels into
California,
US taxes.
exactly. In California, as long as you own a property, you owe state taxes. So that's like, a thing to think about. But then for your salary, anything you earn in the US is taxed in the US, but anything you earn abroad over the last time I looked at this, it was 110,000. It could have been
Hmm.
different by now. But anything you earn over 110,000 abroad is also taxed in the US for the federal on the federal level. And
Okay.
so worth thinking through and kind of managing that depending on your income level, depending on what you need. A lot of these places have a lower cost of living than where we're living in California, and so um, we could kind of play with that, like how much I needed to earn to figure that
Hmm.
out. So yeah, that's probably the trickiest thing that I did not expect. Like I just didn't think about it
Yeah.
until we were talking to other friends who have moved abroad, and so we're like, oh, that's worth thinking about.
Sure, sure. And did you just find an accountant who could navigate all of
Mhm.
that, or did you have to go
Yeah.
outside and kind of find a new person?
No, so our accountant couldn't, our person who had done taxes before. And so we had to go through basically, when we're setting up this business, okay, who do you recommend we talk to figure out
Hmm.
US? And there are people who specialize in this, right?
Sure.
People who specialize in working with expats of like, hey, we can do, figure out all that liability.
Great.
So
Great.
that's the thing. And then as far as ethics, you know, the way you practice has so many kind of social dynamics in it, that really educating yourself and seeking out consultation and support in how do you navigate that because the issues are different in different places, like what the societal pressures look like, what the norms look like, what the particular populations you'll look like. For New Zealand, I had to start learning Maori phrases and really kind of educate myself on that because it was not a culture I had known much about.
Hmm.
And New Zealand does a wonderful job of really taking steps towards integration and helping. And they haven't nailed it. No one has nailed it in the entire world, but they're taking steps towards it. Um, and so it's a really, really, really big way and a big part of how people practice over there, at least in the university kind of sector that I was looking at. And then in Canada, there again, the fact that I had to fill out a thing on CE saying, "Yep, this is how I'm going to get it," was just so different, and in a really cool way, in a really great way, but just
Hmm.
really different. And so making sure you educate yourself on kind of what is really important for being a psychologist in that culture.
Sure. Quick question before we transition. I keep saying we're
Yeah,
going to shift topics, but did you get any sense of the receptivity of these other places to US people,
individuals.
citizens? Yeah, yeah, individuals, psychologists. Yeah.
For the most part, by and large, are very welcome. Yes, please, like we're so excited. Like we love your background and your focus. Again, one of the job offers I had in New Zealand that I really wanted, but I couldn't go for, unfortunately, was working with kind of diagnosing learning differences, which is what I do. Right, that's my private practice. But there, the training is still up and coming for
Okay.
that particular concern. And so they were like, "Yes, like you have so much more experience. Like you have so much experience, please." And I think the hesitation is more on the work permit and like kind of legality side, and a little bit on the will you actually move here side, which I get. Obviously, I've been on both sides, unfortunately, on that one.
Hmm.
But I think most people are really welcoming towards US citizens. We were up in Canada for a couple months earlier this year, and I really did not get the sense that, especially people who are looking to move there and kind of bring skills into the economy, I think there's just much more openness.
Great.
Yeah. I will
Okay.
say I've been to Portugal twice, one in 2022 and then one last year in 2024. And you can tell there's a tension coming between expats and locals. And that's a very different economic picture than Alberta and New Zealand I'm talking about.
For
And
sure.
so, yeah, so I think it is present in some places, but not in the two that I was looking at.
I see that. Yeah, I was just reading something maybe within the last week around protests and things like that in certain, I think, European countries around tourism and over tourism and expats and that
Port-
kind of thing.
Portugal was one of those, and I get it.
Yes.
I totally get it after being there, and I understand there. Like I said, that's a different tension, a different economy, a different setup, and so that's what part of knowing the local culture, right? And knowing like, oh, hey, is this good for not just myself, but for kind of the society writ large?
Yes. Yes. So let's talk about the personal component and the family
Yeah,
piece. So I know, again, just speaking personally, this is the biggest hurdle for us. We have a 12 and a 13-year-old. They're smack in the middle of middle
yeah,
school. They're involved in sports and, all their teams and all the stuff. And so that's the biggest hurdle when we think about how would we do this? What would that be like for them? So just selfishly, that's where I want to start is how did
yeah.
you start to think about this for your kids and uprooting kids?
Yeah. So my kids, when we first started thinking about this, my kids were 6 and 5.
Okay.
So different stage, right? Totally different stage. And as they've gotten older, they're now 8 and 7. There have been shifts. And so I don't ever want to tell people like, "Yeah, your kids will be fine," cuz they might not be. They'll ultimately be fine, but they might not adjust really well to that. But I having done it and having kind of traveled to all these different places and lived in these different places and all of that for at least a couple months at a time, it's been really, really cool to see what our kids have gained and the
Hmm.
perspective that they have that's just really different in both, obscene ways and not, right? They're like, "I want to go to this place for my birthday. I want to go to the Great Barrier Reef." I'm like, that
Oh
is
gosh.
15 hours away, like by flight, friend.
Dial it
And so
back,
like
kiddo.
what they expect, right? Like what they expect from the world of like, "Oh
Mm,
yeah," or I'll never forget, we hopped on a plane and it was a 1 or 2 hour flight. And my kids are like, "This is short. Like, we don't even have enough
hmm.
time to, like, get into this." And I'm like, "Right, because 'cause you're used to these, like, 10 to 13-hour flights."
Massive.
Massive. Or we're about to go on a massive road trip, and I'm like, "Yeah, they could do a 10-hour day in the car. They'll be fine. They can sleep anywhere." They've had so many conversations cross Language, cross culturally, I have this distinct memory of my very small, like 5 or 6 year old. Um, he's just a small kid. Um, talking with in Switzerland with these giant waiters. They're like 6 feet, and so they're just towering over him. And he's like ordering his French fries, and they're all diligently paying attention to him and being very sweet. But just the skills they've been able to learn in
Hmm.
traveling have been really cool, and the ability to adapt to a different culture and learn, and I think, one of the things in my raising in the US was very much it's very myopic. It can be very myopic and very US focused. If you look at our headlines, it's all US focused, not all, but mostly,
Hmm.
and their just knowledge of the world writ large has been really cool. And then the other thing I would suggest for people when you're thinking about kids in particular is you can do a trial run. You can go for like 2 or 3 months, right, during summer break, during to a different place and be like, "Yeah, okay, now this is good, like, we're good on the 2 or 3 months, we don't need to move anywhere." Or you can be like, "Oh, this is great, I wanna do this more." Right? It
Hmm.
doesn't have to be a we move abroad or nothing. It could be like, "Oh, we're gonna go for a little bit," or
Yeah.
we're gonna try this out," or they have programs that, have school included, and so you can kind of look at these different ways of doing it. So that would
Yeah.
be my take on it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, all those things you mentioned are, I think, the benefits that we would hope for. That
Yeah.
our kids become more worldly and can talk
Yeah.
with anyone and have these experiences, expand their horizons.
Yeah.
What did you do for school? I mean, I know from
Yeah.
offline that you do some homeschooling, but yeah,
Yeah.
how did you navigate the school situation?
Yeah, so while they happened, we pulled our kids out because 'cause we're like, "No, we're committed to doing this." And then we get to, August, and we're like, "Oh, no. We've already pulled our kids out of school. Like, what are we gonna
Right.
do?" Um, and I'm like, "Okay, I guess we're gonna homeschool, and I guess we're gonna travel around the world," which has not ever been in my life plan. Like, that's not what I foresaw myself doing. And so we ended up what I call accidentally homeschooling, like, "Well, okay, we'll figure this out." And that's been the most part. We have put them in camps or like one-day programs in a lot of these places. So they've been in forest school in Canada in the middle of winter in the Rockies, out in
Okay.
0-degree Fahrenheit weather. I'm like, "Have fun. You'll be fine. See
Oh
ya."
gosh,
And
that's great.
it's funny, they're going there for camp for a week in July, and they're like, "But there's no ice. Like, I don't really wanna do this if there's no ice that I can slide on." And I'm like, "That's a unique perspective."
Yeah.
And so we'll find these like kind of one-day programs. There are also international schools that can take kids for a semester at a time. And then there's also, yeah. So we did homeschooling. That was kind of our jam, and it's ended up working way better than we thought we would. And I've got a whole. I mean, you've already had a podcast on homeschooling and having your private
Yeah.
practice, and yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I mean, so the ease with which you are talking about this tells me that it worked. I think that's the thing. Like it's easy for me and my personality to really get wrapped up in details and like, oh, how are we going to navigate this? And like, what about their friends and all the, would you say just like philosophically, how would I ask this question? It made sense in my
Yeah.
mind, and now I'm having trouble articulating. Like philosophically, is there just some like roll with it attitude? You have to let go of some of that stuff at a certain point and just like trust that it will work.
Yeah, I think both you have to have it, but also, like, we've kind of beaten it into ourselves.
Okay.
There's so many experiences I can tell you where I've just, like, "What are we doing? Why are we doing this? Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
a nightmare."
Mm-hmm.
Getting COVID in New Zealand and having to isolate in a town of 1,000 people with no children's Tylenol. Like, that's one
Oh
that comes to
gosh.
mind. Um,
Yeah.
and so it happens, but if you go through enough of those, you're like, "We can just deal with this. Like, this will be fine," you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, like, on a minor note, I hate flying. I hate flying. I'm a very anxious
Huh.
flyer, and
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
always been and people are like, "What in the world?" I'm like, "Yeah, but the end result, what I get to do when I get to those locations is worth all the, like, anxiety that I kind of went through." And so it's kind of having almost that framework, not a, like, "Oh, you have a roll with an attitude or you don't," but a, like, we'll figure it out. And if it is
Mhm.
really terrible, we'll change it. Like, we're not going to sacrifice our kids' happiness or health, over it. And so if it gets really bad, you'll shift it. Like, you'll figure it out. And
Mhm.
I think
Mhm.
that has been the bigger attitude shift. And it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There's definitely been hard parts where the kids are like, "Can we go home? Can we do this?"
Mm.
And so that happens too.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. Maybe that's something to talk about. Any surprising like things that were particularly hard. Warnings you might give other families
Yeah.
who are considering this, things to look out for.
Yeah, I think the logistics were particularly hard, especially every time we made a transition. It was just setting up new ways for the kids to make friends, new
Mm.
experiences, housing, readjusting to how do you shop in the grocery store. Every time we made that transition,
Mhm.
it was really stressful. And so if you can minimize the amount of transitions, I have a friend moving to New Zealand next month, actually, and she's just going for 2 years because she's also done what we've done, which is like travel around a lot with the kids. And she's like, we're just going to go in one place and be there for a little bit. And so I think if you can minimize that, and if you have somebody, either yourself, your partner, maybe your kids, if they're old enough, that can deal better with the logistics, you know,
Mhm.
that was the
Mhm.
part that I think tripped us up the most. Um, and when we have struggled, it's kind of almost always fallen down to that.
I gotcha. I gotcha. Yeah, that makes me think of another question or two around the transition. I mean, what did you do with your house in the US?
Yeah.
Are you renting your house during this time? Do you own the house? I mean, I have a lot of
Yeah,
questions around
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Your
Yeah, so we
cars,
own
your possessions, what do you do
all
with
of it,
these things? Yeah.
right? So we own our cars, we own our house, we're lucky in that way, and we, set up mail forwarding, first of all. Like, that was, like, one of the weird logistics things that we're like, "Oh, no, we're in a different country now, we gotta set this up." So I set that up ahead of time. The first
Great.
time around, we did not rent out our house, and I 10 out of 10 don't recommend that, just from the financial burden of it was just a
It
lot.
seems hard. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
To
a lot,
carry
and so
two
to carry
mortgages essentially.
right, all your rental, all the unexpected things, your flight costs, all that jazz. So don't recommend that. But there are several ways you can rent out your house. We're currently doing it as a longer term rental,
Mhm.
and you can do that. You can rent to traveling nurses, which is a kind of another big way, or traveling physicians in general. Um,
Mhm.
you can do Airbnb if that's your jam. That again was just another level of logistics that we couldn't handle.
Mhm.
And so we rented out our house. We still own it because we might want to come back, and we want that place and that neighborhood and all of that. Our cars, we would have friends move them every now and then because we didn't want them, right? We didn't want them losing out their battery.
Oh, yeah.
Or
Yeah.
street cleaning would happen or whatever. So have friends move them every now and then, or give them to family. Be like, hey,
Mm.
here's a car you can use for a little bit. Yeah, if you travel, I mentioned traveling with a pet and other logistics.
Oh
Look
gosh.
up the requirements, right?
Uh-huh.
For the like certain countries, certain especially island countries have a lot of strict biosecurity. New Zealand
Okay.
has one of the strictest biosecurity I've ever seen in the world. My shoes from my bag got taken out and bleached down because they're like no dirt, absolutely no speck of dirt. So we couldn't bring our cat there. You have to go through like 9 months of prep for that, and we didn't. And so but other places, you need like a rabies vaccine or a recent medical, health certificate or what have you. So making sure you look those up ahead of time if
Yeah.
that's something you wanna do. I have friends who have people take care of them for a couple months when they
Yeah.
leave as well.
That makes sense. So,
Yeah.
okay, so I'm putting this all together. So you are in San Diego now, but you are not living in your actual house. Is that right?
No, no. Yeah,
Interesting. So you just long term
yeah,
rented your house
we
and
did.
know that you're going to be in San Diego like at certain points and you'll just rent something while you're there or yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we found like a short-term rental here, like a month-to-month rental
Uh-huh.
here.
Yeah.
And so we're doing that because we have family here. We know we'll be here a couple months out of the year, all of
Yeah.
that. And so we kept our house, which is in a different part of California, and then we are renting here. And then the good thing is when we get all this paperwork all sorted, then we can kind of give 30 days notice and then go up to rent somewhere else.
Yeah. Gotcha. Gotcha. So if someone is thinking about going down this path, as far as budgeting, is there is there a ballpark? Is there and I don't know, it's going to vary depending on the family and the person, financial situation and all of that. But so we could either tackle this in terms of, general kind of budgeting strategies or like things that pop up that you don't anticipate. Yeah. Either of those
So many
directions
things
could
that
be.
pop up that you don't
Yeah.
anticipate. So I mean, I have so many budgeting strategies, but I'm gonna go
Hmm.
with kind of the first part of that, which is the things to think about.
Hmm.
Think about your visa costs, and so
Mm.
those typically have run between 4 and 10K, for the family, for getting all the
Sure.
paperwork done, for hiring the lawyers, kinda things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. You can do it
Yeah.
on your own, but paperwork is not our strong point. So
Yeah.
we're like, we're not gonna get a visa if we have to do this on our own. If you get a job offer that will do it for you, that could cut
Hmm.
down some of the costs, and then you would just have to do your family. So that's a way to mitigate that. But if you're doing setting up your own business or things like that, I already mentioned taxes, uh, licensure fees in different places, right? They're usually a couple hundred a year,
Hmm. Hmm.
depending on the place. So just kind of thinking about that. And then I would tell everybody to just give yourself a little bit extra cushion if you're
Mm.
going to move, because your Airbnb you're gonna rent while you look for a place all of a sudden has mold. I don't know. Ask me how I know that. You need to eat out for a week because you, like, haven't figured out the local grocery store.
Hmm.
There's just so many weird things that can come up. You forgot this item in your packing, or, you need to pay for extra suitcases or what have you. They're all little things that can add up. So really building yourself a cushion. And again, this depends on how logistically minded you are. But if you're not like us, I would cushion in a couple several $1,000s, just mainly for the housing, like making sure you have enough money that you can get other housing if you need to. That's kind
That's
of the
important.
main cushion. Everything else isn't super expensive, but the housing can be really tricky.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Cool. Cool. Any resources that were particularly helpful for you or are particularly helpful for you as you have navigated these journeys? Either
Yeah.
online or, forums or Reddits or I mean, yeah, like yeah.
Yeah. So I found when I was looking at going to New Zealand, I'll say in particular, because we couldn't travel there. We couldn't like go
Mhm,
and check it out first.
mhm,
I found these great podcasts, to be honest. Like that was where
yeah,
I started with
mm,
podcasts, and then some of the podcasts had member communities. And those were really helpful because they were like, hey, here are some local resources that are helpful. Here are some things to think about. Here's navigating both the practical and emotional side of all of this.
yes.
Hear other people who are doing the same thing so you don't feel a little nuts, you know? Like that's really valuable because especially when we were doing it, people are like, what in the world are you doing?
Mhm,
Now we have a ton of friends who are traveling abroad and living abroad, but like back then it wasn't quite the case. So,
yeah,
it kind of depends on where you're at in that cycle, I guess.
mhm,
Um, I would say podcasts are a great one. Facebook communities are another one. Like I have mixed feelings towards Facebook, but I also have like found a lot of communities there, right? This is one of them that's been just very valuable for myself. Um, those two I'd say are the biggest one. And then don't forget if you're interviewing for jobs in particular, ask to be connected, right? Like, hey,
sure.
who can I talk to of people who have made this move similarly or things like that? And that can be really, really helpful. New Zealand in particular was really good around that because it's such a big move, right? It's so far that people are like, nope, here's all these people you can talk to about how to move abroad and what they wish they would have done. And many people had moved them there themselves. So those were all really helpful. But yeah, podcast would be the place to start. You can also, I have friends who moved to Portugal who did a lot of YouTube videos, right?
Mhm,
And so like seeing that so you could kind of see what life will look like and all of that. And also as a way to like hype yourself up when things get hard. Like,
that's important.
right. Because you get kind of down on it. You're like, oh, I don't want to do another one of these things. We just encountered something in our move literally in the past couple days. Like, okay, let's look at pictures, let's look at video, let's like remind ourselves why we want to do this.
Mhm.
And I think that can be, for me, it's very important.
Yeah, that totally resonates with me. I could see there's probably a lot of excitement around it at first. And, there's like a dip when you have to do all the logistics and paperwork and, stuff doesn't work out and you have to pivot and do something different. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Like you would need something to
Yeah.
like pick yourself back up again. It's a huge undertaking,
Or
I'm
you don't
guessing.
get the job interview you want, or like there's just so many things that you could kind of fall down on.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would highly recommend kind of building that community. It's something I've thought of like, should I just build this community of
Hmm.
people who are interested in it?
Yeah.
I haven't undertaken that yet, but it's something I'm thinking about.
Nice. Nice. Well, maybe there's a business idea for you.
There you go.
There we go. Well, this has been great. I know there's so much more that we could talk about and, details and stories and things like that. But I just wanted to give people a sense of what this could look like in a couple different countries. And really appreciate you talking through all of this.
Absolutely. I'm happy to be on here.
Yeah. If folks did want to reach out, first of all, are you open to talking with folks? And if so, what's the best way to contact you?
Absolutely. So I would say my email is best,
Mhm.
and I'll give that to you, but it's hilaryanandphd at
Mhm.
gmail.com. So
Okay.
that's probably the best way. And then also my practice is Lumos assessment. Lumos, like
Mhm.
the wand lighting.
Yes.
And so you can also do a contact form that way too.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. I'll make sure to put those in the show notes so folks can
Perfect.
reach out. But yeah, this is super cool. And it's, again, personally very interesting because we're still, the door is wide, the door is still wide open. So I love just hearing your experience. And it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, just as we close, it sounds like you have had a generally positive experience to the point that you're pursuing these adventures more and more. Is that
Yes.
fair?
I would say they've been generally positive. They've always been learning. Even when they've been hard, they've been learning. And
Yeah.
yeah, we've got a couple of adventures on tap for the fall and next year that obviously we've not been dissuaded by any of it.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Well, this is
Yeah,
super cool. Yeah. Great to chat with you, Hillary. Thanks for being here.
of course.